Okay, this is my second video on Train Sim World for PlayStation 4. I'm the Train Sim guy. Unfortunately, my first video, I made a bit of a mess, and I managed not to record my audio for most of it. So, apologies for that if you sat through it and wondered, when's he going to say something else? I actually talked to myself the entire way from Paddington to wherever it was we ended up, before switching everything off and realising that I'd had my mute button on the whole time. So hopefully won't do that this time. This video, I'm going to look at the train safety systems. One thing before I do go any further, two things in fact. First of all, I am not an experienced broadcaster, YouTuber, whatever. I'm just streaming from my PlayStation, and I'm literally just making it up as I go along. You'd never have guessed, right? Second thing, if there's anything wrong with the audio mix, I'm still not 100% convinced. I think maybe the game sounds a bit loud for my voice. I've played about with it a bit. I think it's a bit better now. But anything like that, any pointers or tips, gratefully received. So, purpose of this video, what I want to do is I want to look at the safety systems on the trains. Each train's slightly different. We're going to look at the class 166 today. Now I'm just jumping straight into this because I suspect a lot of people when they buy this game, yeah, you do the tutorials, you have a wee look at the scenarios, but most people, I suspect, want to just jump in and drive trains. The developer doesn't tell you very much about the safety systems and things though, so a lot of this stuff, it is out there on the web, it's scattered all over the place. If you go to the Train Sim forums, there's some really good sources in there, including a fantastic big long document. It's essentially, it's the instruction manual the developers probably should have written themselves, but they didn't. If you Google Train Sim World signalling help, I think was what I found. I will dig it out and I will link to it in another video at some point. The point is, this game is a bit rubbish at telling you how it actually all works. So today we'll look at the class 166. I'm going to talk before we start the service up, because once you spawn into the service, you have about a minute to leave the station before you're going to be running behind schedule, and it's very difficult to get that back again. I run with most of my visual aids turned off. I'm going to turn that off. This is a new profile I set up just for doing these videos, so I may, as I'm going through it, just find little things I need to tweak and change from my usual setup. So I have the speed limit heads up display turned on. This just puts a little bit in the corner telling you when the speed limit change is impending, what it's going to be, how far you've got to go. These things are signposted at the side of the route. If you understand how to read the signs, you can do it. However, some of the signs are quite difficult to pick out, especially at high speed or in bad weather or what have you. So having that little thing there is useful. When I'm driving on the Great Western, I turn the signal parts of the heads-up display off, because I prefer to do it by reading the signals and using the other systems on the train. As I say, they are all modelled, but they are off by default, with no real guidance how to use them. I don't use the floating markers in the middle of the screen generally. I don't personally like them very much. They tend to sit on top of other things you need to see. I drive using the signals visually, and sometimes that marker can be floating right in front of the next signal. Very, very useful while you're still getting used to the game though, because they do give you an on-screen thing in the middle of your field of view that you can use to judge distances and stuff like that. Till you get the hang of the game, you might want to use some of these stuff, and I may well come back and talk about these a bit more later on in another video. I'll turn the scenario mark off as well. So I think that's all we want. So let's just apply those, and let's go play with the train. So we'll keep it simple, we'll just do a nice clear spring day. And here's what you get with scheduled services. So scheduled services, you're looking at a 24-hour day. You can see these are all the class 166 services that are scheduled for that day. You get the stretch of the line between London and Reading, so it doesn't matter what these say, you're never going farther than Reading train station, unfortunately. Now, it doesn't really tell you much about where you're going to be stopping, how long it's going to take you to do the route. If you know how to read the head codes, however, you can give yourself an idea. If the head code begins with a 1, it's a high-speed service, an express, so you maybe only have 1 or 2 stops between London and Reading, if any at all. If the head code starts with a 2, it's a normal passenger service, so you're probably going to be stopping a bit more often. The other head codes, 3 is an empty stock move, so is 5, I think is the other one you're going to see in here. That's just moving empty stock from, usually just from a depot somewhere to the station, or vice versa, at the beginning or end of a route. And this one here with no head code, it never comes out onto the main line, so it doesn't need one, it's just yard shunting. I've not actually done them myself yet. So, I'm going to just have a wee look and pick a service. We'll probably do an express, because the focus here is on the safety system, not on the starting and stopping and all that sort of stuff. We'll do one coming into London, I think. Now, certain times of the day the line is busier than others. I think if you go sort of between back at 7, sort of 7:30, 9, you're going to see a lot more traffic on the line than if you go at 2 o'clock in the afternoon or 4 in the morning, you know. Let's see, so we want a 1, a head code of the 1, so we've got a nice fast service through. And yeah, let's do the last leg of Henley-on-Thames to London Paddington. Now, when I start the game, the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to do the cab setup. All you need to do to get the train moving is to put the reverser, unlock the reverser, put it in forward, and you can move at that point. If you want to do it more realistically, we're going to be switching a couple of systems on. You'll see what they are as we get in, and then I'll talk a little bit about them as we go along the route. It's going to be probably about a 20 to 30 minute trip along the railway. And I need to find something to talk about for all that time, so I'll do most of my talking on the fly. Your loading screens are completely random. They don't bear any, or the route you're going to play doesn't have any impact on them. You're not always going to get the loading screen for the route you're going into. So, here we are at Reading Station. The very first thing I'm going to do is turn on the safety system. So up here, now, something's not right. Oh, I know what I've turned off. We'll leave the button prompts on for this. So that's the AWS fuse. We turn that on. The DSD, which we'll talk about in a minute, and the TPWSIS on. And now that we've switched the safety systems on, we'll sit in the driver's seat. Make sure there's some lighting in the train. Daytime, so headlights today. Cab light should be off, we don't need it on. Probably won't need the back lights for the gauges, but I like to have them on anyway. Now, we've already been here for 40 seconds, and we've done, I think, pretty much everything. I just need to unlock the reverser. That was the AWS tone you heard. You've already got it switched on, then when you engage the reverser it will sound, and you clear it with the circle button. That's 1 minute we've been sitting here, so we're just going to get moving. So throttle to notch 3 just to get underway. Notch 5. once we've got a bit of momentum, and then once we're clearing the platforms, we'll knock it up to full Malky. So current speed limit, as you'll see on the heads-up display, 90, but we are dropping to 70 in a little over a mile's time, so just bear that in mind as we're accelerating. Now, the systems that we've switched on, you'll see to the right of the heads-up display, and above the little speaker thing on my desk, the little sort of black and yellow dartboard looking thing, also known as the flower. That is tied into the advanced warning system, which we switched on. It will always come on like that when you first switch the train on, and then once you pass the first detection point in the track, it'll start to work. It should start here. You hear a ping, the little thing goes out, that's to tell us that the next signal on the line is green. You can see the signal coming up ahead. It's basically there to, one, to make sure the driver is paying attention, and two, it helps in really bad weather. Sometimes, just because of the way these lines are built, there's a minimum space in between the signals. Sometimes the next signal might not be abundantly clear in certain conditions. This is just a little backup to it. The signal, if the signal is at caution or danger, instead of the ping, you will hear a horn will sound, and you have, I think it's about 7 or 8 seconds to acknowledge that horn before the train applies the automatic brakes. It's making sure again that the driver is paying attention and that you have realised you have to react to the signal ahead. Now, the signal's green, those lights above it just tell us it's going to be diverting us onto the points here. So we're going across to the fast line. The speed limit will be 70 until we cross onto the fast line, but we're not up to 70 yet. Now you'll see the signs at the side of the track say 125, and there you go, you see the speed limit element of the heads-up display has gone up to 125. However, the line speed of a Type 166 is 90 miles per hour, so we will not be exceeding that speed during this trip. Other systems that we turned on were the driver safety device, which I'm expecting to hear from momentarily. This was a device installed years ago on British trains, essentially to make sure that the driver's okay. Driver's on his own in the cab, all sorts of things can happen. People get unwell, people become incapacitated for whatever purpose. You don't want that happening to a train driver. So there's a system built into the train. If you haven't touched the controls for a certain length of time, you will hear an alarm go off. There we go. Circle button to acknowledge it, and carry on as nothing happened. If you don't press that button, the emergency brakes will come on, the train will stop, you will not be able to cancel them and clear them until the train has come to a complete halt. So keep your ear open for that if you're using it. The other safety system we turned on was the TPWS. It's a passive system, and it is designed to stop the train if you go past a red signal, or if you go past certain other things which don't really come into play in this game, or certainly I've not discovered them. It can be tripped when you go too fast over a speed limit, past the speed limit sign. There are other circumstances, I believe, around sets of points and things where it can be triggered. If you're driving to the speed limits and the signals, you should never trip it though. It was a 125 in the other direction. I think I just gave my age away there a wee bit by referring to it as a 125. So there was the DSD again, the driver's safety device. We just clear it. So we're 2.5 miles from Maidenhead. There's a station coming up ahead, which is not for us. Now, if I remember my driver's rule book correctly, you're supposed to sound your horn before you arrive at a station when you're not stopping at it. In fact, no, there's not a station just up here, maybe a bit further down the line. I'm still learning this route, so I can't always remember exactly what's coming up next as we go along. I apologise for that. Here's another train on the slow lines. Those are the slow lines to the left, where most of the stop and start services are. The lines on the right are the fast lines. I think we're probably going to spend most of this trip, although we can't go up to the full line speed of 125 miles an hour, because we're not stopping very often, we can be fitted in on this line. in between the intercity express trains. So we're about a mile away from Maidenhead now. You'll see the top left there. As I said before, I don't have the floating objective thing on because I personally don't really like it that much. So just under a mile, we're at 90 miles an hour. We should probably start braking. You'll see the brakes on these trains are actually pretty powerful. I started braking way too early there, to be honest with you. Still, best part of half a mile out. 8:12. So we're, although it says arrival is at 8:12, it gives you a minute or two's leeway. You can be, I think, about a minute and a half, 2 minutes late, and it will still count. Right, better shed some of the speed. Too busy talking and not concentrating. So 4 seconds for the brake. Braking 1, braking 2 in full service. You never want to go beyond full service. Any more than that is emergency braking, and I believe that is a bit of a no-no for a train driver. I'm not a train driver, but my understanding is doing that would get you a chat with the boss, and the kind that you don't get any tear bickies at. So I've gone a little bit over the line, but not enough to... Not the line, but it tells me a stopping point. I went a few yards beyond it, but we're not going to worry too much. As long as you're not hanging way off the end of the platform, you're fine. And you are sometimes better just to go a little bit deeper than the thing suggests, because it can be a bit neat at the back. There's one in America, and I think it's one of the New York stations, where if you stop at the marker, you've got about 4 or 5 coaches hanging off the back of the platform there. So these are the free cameras. I don't spend a lot of time using them, it has to be said, because I'm driving without the signal assistance on my heads-up display, and although I'll get an AWS tone, you're better to be able to see what's coming rather than just relying purely on that. So you stop for about a minute to let the passengers on and off. Oh, somebody just appeared out of thin air. There are a few odd wee glitches and annoyances like that in this game still, but I'm sure they'll iron them out. It's their first attempt on it's their first go at doing anything like this on a PC, a PlayStation. Sorry, they are Dovetail Games. I think have primarily been a PC developer up till now, so we'll get underway again. So that's our one single stop on this route. We will not stop again until we reach London Paddington. We've got a green signal ahead of us, so I've got no problem. Let's just watch our train leaving. Right. So we're underway. I don't honestly know what the signalling is going to be like on this route. No, my luck, we're going to get all greens now. This is a new profile I set up for doing YouTube on. So I don't know which, I can't remember all of the routes I've done and not done so far on my usual profile that I play on. So as I said before, I think at the beginning of the last video that I did, graphically, it's not terrible. it could be a lot worse. As I just said, it is the developers. I think their only other foray into console gaming was a fishing simulator. Never played it, but I'm going to guess they didn't really have to cope with the headaches of trying to make it look like the world was going by at 100 miles an hour in that game. Draw distances are... I mean, you can see yourself, the detailed track is springing into view just in front of me. The rails draw forever, but the sleepers and whatnot, the fine detail does kind of pop into view a little bit. Can be a bit irritating at first, and you don't really notice it after a while. it's fair to say the game does look better in some situations than in others. There are certain combinations of weather and light that do make you stop and go, actually that looks alright. And there's others that it's fair to say look pretty garbage. There's a few glitches and issues with the graphics. You can see it sort of occasionally things have got fuzzy edges and odd little lines and whatnot jump out of things. Again, it's not game-breaking stuff, and to be honest, if you like trains, you want a train simulator, this is the only game in town without going out and buying yourself a PC, let's be honest. It is at the very beginning of its life as well. The way that these games are generally handled on PC, for those of you who are maybe not that familiar with this sort of thing, my understanding is, I've not been a simmer on PC for a long time myself, but they start with a product, they build it. So what you've bought with Train Sim World so far is not everything that's going to be there for Train Sim World. We already know we're getting the West Somerset Railway. There's another German one coming. They have said they've got more and more stuff planned further down the line. See what I did there? This game is going to grow, and I'm hopeful that with 500 million PlayStation 4s in the world now, there is going to be some kind of market for this sort of game. It's not the first time we've seen with PlayStation 4 and Xbox One developers seem to be more willing to take a bit of a chance and bring games that traditionally we wouldn't have got to the platform. I'm thinking games like maybe Elite Dangerous, stuff like even Sudden Strike, games like that. There was I felt with the PlayStation 3 and the Xbox 360 generation, there was almost a real dearth of genres on the console. It felt like we just kept getting the same 2 or 3 types of game over and over again. Now there seems to be a bit of a realisation that there is maybe a market in consoles for games that traditionally we wouldn't have got. And this is one of them, and it's fine. So yeah, it could do with a bit of polish for the console, absolutely no argument there. I doubt that the developer would even argue too much with you about that. But for what it is, it's quite good. And especially when you realise that there is a lot more to it with the safety systems and whatnot than perhaps you first realised, because as I keep saying, it does a really bad job of explaining a lot of these things to you. Now, for a video about train safety systems, I've spent most of this trip so far not having to acknowledge any at all. I was really kind of hoping for some signals or what have you. That said, at least you now know how to switch them on. Now, there is an AWS alert. Doesn't always apply to a signal though. It can be used to warn you you're coming up to a speed limit change, or you're coming up to a junction or something like that. As it turned out, the signal was green when we got here. So it's these traffic light type ones you want to look at. You might have noticed before we went through the station, you saw one that looked very like a national speed limit sign. That is called an advanced signal. That signal is just telling you what the next one says, and it's usually there because something's obstructing the view of the advanced signal, and you're not going of the main signal rather, and you might not see it in time to react to it, so they put an advanced signal further down the line just to show you what it's at. But that's not the one that's going to, if it was red, that's not where your TPWS is going to kick in. That's not what the AWS alert is warning you about or anything like that. You'll see a few of them down the line. So trundling along at 90 miles an hour. Again, the line speed is 125, but the maximum speed for a 166 is 90, so we're just going to try and hover around that. I think we're probably going to make fairly good time to Paddington anyway. The express runs are generally generous with their time. I've never arrived late at Paddington for one yet, I don't think. We're just sounding the horn as we come up to a station that we won't be stopping at. And through we go. So another ping from the AWS. The line is still all clear ahead. Now the 166 is it's a brilliant little train. It takes a while to get up to its full speed. The braking is phenomenal. Even from full line speed 90 mile an hour, you can pretty much, in most, certainly on a nice dry day, you can get away with leaving your braking until well into the last mile. You can leave it almost a half a mile from the station before you start braking. Depends on the gradient and the rail conditions, as I said. But it's not a train that you're going to have to be thinking 2 or 3 miles in advance of. Unlike the Class 43 and the Class 66 as well, you have to think ahead with a little bit. So we're still just trucking along. Oh, here comes a train in the other direction. Still a green signal. I was kind of hoping that going at a slightly busier time of day might get us into some signals. So you can see there the DSD actually went off just as I was about to move the throttle back a notch. When the DSD goes off, you can clear either with the circle button or by moving the throttle and brake levers. Cockpit controls in the cockpit. I keep calling it that. Sorry, that's the Elite Dangerous player in me coming out. All the cab controls, the clickable and draggable and movable and what have you. You can turn things on and off just by, click and drag like that. It is kind of clunky. It's not perfectly implemented, has to be said. I do have a USB keyboard connected to the console as well, which helps a lot. You can operate a lot of the ancillary controls without all that clicking and dragging mucking about. That's how I'm able to, for instance, do that without having to look away from out the window. That's been done with the keyboard there. DSD again. So we're hearing a lot from the DSD on this trip. As I said, hopefully you should never trip the the TPWS. It's purely a passive system, not something you should really need to work that much. And AWS has just been pinging away clears for us the whole way down the line. There's another advanced signal coming up in front of us, and that's there because you might or might not have noticed that the main signal was obscured by an overhead gantry post just on the approach to it. There's probably another one just outside this tunnel as well, because we can't see the actual signal until we're around this little curve here. There we go, there's another green. So the sequence of signals, let's talk about signals for a little while. The sequence of signals should always be green. After a green, you should only ever really see a double yellow. If you see a double yellow, it is to warn you that the following signal is a single yellow. A single yellow warns you that the next one is at red, and if it's at red, you have to stop. Now the reason for so many yellows is because trains take a long time to slow down. Even if the signals are a mile apart, coming up on a yellow, you might not stop in time for the red if you are going at full line speed in a heavy train. So they have this advanced system of double yellows. And the double yellow, when you see it, is your cue to prepare for a caution ahead. You should slow down to a sensible speed at that point. Most trains, for the high-speed train certainly, 60 miles an hour. I'm in a Class 66, maybe about 40, 45, because they take a bit longer to slow down. In a Class 166, you can actually pretty much keep going until you see the next signal and confirm you have, in fact, still got a single yellow. Red means there's a train in the next sector. Single yellow means it's 2 sectors down, double yellow means 3 sectors down. So as the train ahead moves further away from you, the signals should start to run in your favour. If you're catching up to another train, that's when you'll start to see the yellows and the possibly even a caution. You sometimes see them as well if the points up ahead are set against you or something like that. Trains do have to cross from one line to another, as we had to do at the beginning of this. Sometimes the points will be used to slow you down as well. The signals rather will be used to slow you down for a set of points. So you'll see a double yellow, and then that will run into a single yellow. The way to tell if it's a point signal or not is to look for the white lights above it. You'll usually see a row of white lights pointing off in the direction that you're going to be getting sent. Now, that's normally something that I think drivers would know about beforehand. To them, they've got that wee telephone thing, they talk to the signalman, they're talking to their dispatchers and what have you. So I would guess they probably know. In the game, you know it's happening when you come to the signals, basically, and it's an experience thing. With the scheduled service, if you do exactly the same train at the same time every day, you will start to learn where it's getting moved and where it switches tracks, where it's likely to run into traffic and things like that. But it's like any game, it's a question of playing it, practicing, getting better at it, playing it more, getting better at it. Start with the nice easy ones like the non-stops and then go on to the full stopping services and things like that. So we're doing 90 miles an hour just now, so I'm just going to wind the power back a little bit so we don't overspeed. 5 miles out from London, you can see there's a speed limit change coming up ahead. Again, the reason I use that, you can't always see the signage. If I was a real train driver, I'd know every inch of this line like the back of my hand. I'm not, and I don't. So that's a little bit of help I still give myself. We're not doing over 100 anyway, so that change isn't really going to affect us. That's for the benefit of the class 43s on the line. So we can just blast on through there quite merrily without a concern. The next change I think is going to be down to about 50 miles an hour, which I think we have to be down to by about 2 miles outside of Paddington. It should pop up on the right there very shortly, but it is also signposted rail side or track side. If you wanted to try and do it that way, you can drive the freight trains purely off the trackside signage more or less. They're not going fast enough that you miss everything. But I find, again, going back to just the not quite as good graphics as the PC people get, not quite as good. They're nowhere near as good as the PC can do. But yeah, the signage, I wouldn't like to rely on it solely. Not yet, anyway. Mind you, it could just be that my eyes are a bit crap. I mean, I'm old enough to call a 43 a 125, so, you know, there is that. The next AWS we should hear is actually warning me in advance. I believe this is to warn us of the speed limit change coming up. I think we do use it for things like that as well. There you go, we're 1 mile away from the drop to 50 miles an hour. Now this train will do it fairly quickly. If you were coming through here in a class 43, you'd probably want to be doing your initial braking already. I don't think you come down the line this far in a 66 in the game. So we'll take the power off and we'll just apply a bit of light braking. So we've got just under half a mile to go. Speed's dropping off quite nicely. Getting a bit closer, I might just pump an extra little bit of braking in there. You can see the sign coming up next to that signal ahead, so yeah, let's just get to it. Overcooked it slightly. little bit, although we're coming back down to 40 miles an hour very shortly. We're 2 minutes, well, actually, I might be doing well to get in for 8:32. Just looking at the time there. Although I don't think I was going quite full 90 miles an hour the whole way along the line. Sometimes the timetable does seem a little bit optimistic, quite frankly. Other times you seem to have a bit too much time on your hand at the other end when you stop and wait for passengers. Again, I guess that's something we'll probably iron out a bit. Sometimes it's not your fault at all. Signalling and other things on the line can make you run late. The American trains, their safety systems, they're super restrictive, and they'll have you running at really low speeds for whole stretches of the line. You can't exceed without tripping the brakes. But the consequence of doing that is that it does put you behind the scheduled time. Mind you, I'm not sure that Amtrak are particularly renowned for running a punctual service anyway. I think they make Southern Rail look good, actually, from what I understand. So down to 40 miles an hour for this part of the approach. We might as well just coast in now. We've got to be down to 25 miles an hour entering the station, but that's actually... it's further away than you'd think. Sometimes you look at the yardage coming down, especially as you approach a station. When you close to within half a mile, it switches to yards, and you quite often think, oh Christ, that number's coming down really quickly, I need to stop the train, and then you find you've slowed down and you're still 400 or 500 yards to crawl along. We were hearing the AWS alerts there as we came through the signals. They were just warning us to slow down. Oh, missed the 25 mile an hour speed limit, too busy talking. I'm not used to doing this. I'm not an experienced YouTuber, as you've no doubt guessed, and I'm not particularly used to talking to people while I'm doing well, certainly not with this game. You do need to concentrate quite a lot on this game sometimes as well. Well, hats off to the guys that have been doing this for, the people that do this all the time and make it look really easy. Oh, we're going to hit the buffers as well. And that would be because I was talking and I speeded up instead of slowed down. So that's how not to end the run. I'm surprised. I thought that would have ended the scenario, but it's not. So anybody who didn't break their ankles in that can get off the train now. That was embarrassing. So that's now 2 videos in a row where, having played this game since launch and not really screwed anything up that badly, I've managed to not turn off the brakes on the first video at one of the stations, and I've managed to, for the first time ever, crash a train on the second video. This is going really well so far. So that was just a little bit about the safety systems and the Class 166. I hope that some of you find it useful, even if it just means you now know how to switch them on. I didn't get as many signal alerts as I would have liked coming down that line. I think I'll try and find another route at some point where I know that I'm going to get stopped or something like that, and I'll do one of those. And I think, oh, let's just lock the doors to trip the end of this. And I think what I'll do for the next run is it will probably be a Class 66 goods train, and that'll give me probably a chance to talk about signalling more, because I know that I will always get AWS alerts, and it's a good opportunity to talk about some of the signage and stuff by the track. So we just finished that up. Gives you your points. As you see, I don't have very many. As I said before, this is a profile that I set up just purely for doing these videos. It's not my main profile. So this is London Paddington. Here we are. Ain't she a beaut? This is an example of sometimes the game actually looks really good, and then in the blink of an eye you discover a glitch or a bug or a texture that's the wrong way around, and the whole thing just looks awful. That doesn't happen too often though, fortunately. And I think even with the bear in mind as well that it makes me stream this at 720p. That's a restriction of the PlayStation. As I said, not an experienced YouTuber, don't have a suite of editing equipment. I'm streaming this directly from the console to YouTube. So I do apologise if it's not up to the usual high calibre that you expect from train sim streamers, because I know a lot of those guys are doing it on, you look at their graphic settings and the way they edit their videos and that, they make it look easy. I'm just some guy who's talking crap while driving a train. So I'm going to stop talking now, and I'm going to go and have a little rifle through the Class 66 schedules, and we'll get something up about then. As I say, hope this video, really some of it might be helpful, some help to some of you. Thanks very much for watching.